Hey, I'm back, and I want to do something today. I haven't done this in, oh my gosh, it's been a long time, and I'm working on a new sequence. It's called "The Lights of Christmas." This is from an artist whose name escapes me. Way to go, Ron, from Australia. And I was approached by somebody to maybe suggest that I do this, and I sort of fell in love with the song. And I think it's a perfect song for that Christmas spirit, what we live through all the time, every season, and I really like it. So, and I think you'll like the voice. It's a real poppy kind of sound, kind of upbeat. And I just want to go over what I've done with it so far and look at some of the effects. I think you'll find some interesting things here. I have some effects that I've not really used before in other sequences. Little tidbits of things I found by accident, and that's my favorite part about sequencing, is the discovery and just finding new ways to express my craft with lights to music. And that's really simple. So just a real quick rundown on this. All pixels, no yard. I have added another group here for this because I did want to isolate just the house from the yard. I think the reason for that was I didn't want snow falling in the yard. I wanted to keep this more of a mystery. That's sort of what I remember. Really what I have is the first bit of it, the intro and the first verse. I really haven't gotten to the chorus part. I'm still wondering what I'm going to do with that. I do have the mega tree throughout, and I'll talk about why I may do things like that, but let's just take a watch. All right, so that's kind of where I got to as far as before we go into the chorus part where it talks about those Christmas lights. And of course I have the tree throughout, but if we go back to the beginning section, this intros could be tricky because you don't want to reveal all your cards. You don't want everything to turn on right away. I don't like that. It's like getting to the climax of a movie before you've seen any of the backstory. That's not good. You don't want to do that. You want to save some of that. So if I close out of this, typically something like this, I'm going to start with some snow. It's very much a Christmas-esque song, so it makes sense, and I like intros with snow. It sets the tone, and then we kind of get into what the Megatree may be doing, and it's very, very, very subtle stuff that's happening. It's just some sparkles on the tree, very, very nostalgic, and then some movement as we get into the first part of the verse. The other part that it's kind of interesting is you hear these shakers, these shaker bells. Not those. These. Sleigh bells, I think is what we call them. And I wanted to create some subtle movement with the trees I have, the winterberry trees. And I didn't want them to really stick out. I call them twig trees, but they are the winterberry trees, different from the spiral trees that I have that are true spirals. So if I get in here, I created a little bit of movement here. If you can see this, this really is just some meteors. And underneath the meteors, I have some of these beautiful things, little morphs. And underneath that, I have some twinkles. And I'm just trying to get this shaking sensation, but very understated. And then, of course, I did want to bring in some spiral trees, but again, very, very understated. The magic to this is every time people come back to see these shows, they may not be able to take everything in at once, and they'll come back a second time, and usually I hear this: "Did you add that? Was that always there?" And yes, it was always there. And this is where we get into the spiral trees, one at a time, over time, coming in. And then also on the right side of the yard, and it kind of develops to the end where they're all on at the same time. But if you watch carefully, you'll see this. Very subtle. And then they start coming in over here. And then they're out. And that's kind of the beauty of it, because we're not interrupting with the flow of the show. And of course, the gratuitous chimes, the bells across the top with the icicles. Pretty obvious what's going on there. It's a very simple effect. I just liked it. You put on a 3D effect, 3D fade, and some sparkles, and you get this really nice look. You know, if you don't have a two-story, that's great. Might even look better. Or you can make it go across one side and come back the other. Whatever you like to do. It's just a nice little subtle impact. And then for the rest of the intro, really is some floodlights that come in that are very laid back as well. I don't want them to take over. I just want it to set some mood. And you can change the floodlights to any color you like. I am a huge fan of the candle effect because it just creates that feeling that it's just kind of doing its own thing as the wind blows. And then I use per node to make it a little more pronounced. The color is always impacted with this effect by the hue. Now I can go in here and put in value curves to get the colors to float up and down, but I thought just the solid color there was enough. I used 10-watt floods, so it's not going to be blatantly obvious that they're trying to steal any time. So there is one other thing. Oh yes. Did you miss those? You really have to be watching for these. I'm a sucker for percussion because, you know, I'm a drummer. So if you look at the percussion vocals, I have vocals in here where I've taken the time to put the words in there for reference in case I want to show a town square or something like that. But listen to this section right here and watch the timings. Dun 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 dun. So I wanted to do something kind of fun with the flakes and let them be a percussive element to that section. I took the time to create these timings. Why not use them for something good? And so I have my A flakes by Gilbert Engineering, my B, D, G, K, I, just a whole bunch. And the idea is to use these timings. And I love using Shockwave for things like this. Each flake has a different sort of interpretation of the way it uses the Shockwave, depending on the number of nodes in it. And that's kind of a cool thing. So we get some really interesting effects from this, and we'll just watch the flakes. And you can put these, you can use these timings on anything you like. So if you don't have flakes on your house and you've got other elements in your yard, maybe you want to put them on the mini trees. They look great on the mini trees as well. There are, let's see, how many notes do we have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. So there's plenty, and you can move these around. The idea is you just want punches on your elements somewhere in your show, and you can repurpose these for anything. Okay, cool, cool, cool. Let's move along. Let's get to this first section, because when I got to here, I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. 4, 3, 2, 1. So here we're introducing some movement, and the first thing I usually do is go in here and start taking a look at, well, what did I do with my mega tree? What is it kind of starting on? And I don't do this a lot because it's kind of an abrupt change when you go from that to this. Here's the transition. And again, I'm trying to stay with the nostalgia of these beautiful little lights in here, and this happens to come from the twinkles. And I'm using the, if you look at what I'm doing with these, where's my twinkles, twinkles, twinkles? Maybe they're not in there. They should be. Yes, there they are. There they are. The way I make the twinkles stay on the inside of the lines, so to speak, you remember this when you're always trying to help your kids stay in the lines, and I always sucked as a kid in school drawing in the lines when I was coloring. I hated it. I wasn't good at it. But when you're sequencing, you want to be able to control whether these flashing little twinkles should show through the white lines of the tree that's turning. And I don't like that. I like them to be behind the scenes. That creates a depth. A new dimension that wouldn't look the same if the twinkles were coming through. It'd start looking flat, and I'm not a fan of flat. So there you go. And really, I just wanted this to kind of move with the music. And the rest of that, you can see the house is doing its thing with the eaves. Let me get all the way down here past all of these Gilbert Engineering flakes. There's a bunch of them in there. Well, it's not the flakes, it's all these sub-model groups, and there's a lot of them. I'm doing the same thing with the house. And again, I want to create some type of continuity. So if I got a bunch of things moving to the right and the music switches and it goes to the left, that's cool. And what really is setting this tone is part of the melody, but also the bass riff. Listen to this. And speaking of the bass riff, if you haven't noticed what I'm doing with the mini trees, it's pretty cool. It's pretty fun. It took a while to do. And again, I always talk about sequencing at the group level, but there are times when you want to be able to isolate at the model level, and there's quite a bit of that. So when you map the sequence, you're going to need to pay attention and map mini tree to mini tree, group tree, or mini tree group to mini tree group. That'll be very important. If I double click on here, you will see here's what I've done with the mini trees. And I've taken these bass notes. Now, don't think that I have this absolutely on the money as far as the notation or the tone. If you say that's an A sharp and it's really, I've got it more on a B flat, don't blame me. I'm a drummer, not a guitar player. And this is what this looks like, and this was pretty cool. Now, when I originally had this idea, I was thinking, well, how about a guitar string plucking, like a bass guitar? And that would have been a lot tougher to pull off. I don't think it would have looked right with the mini trees. But I was able to get these to bounce in a unique way, just using the center Y value at 0, radius 1, 1, 20, width 5, and width 2 at 0. And this gave me a nice little push for these. And they're great. And it's just a cool little impact. The pixel poles, you saw that. These are, again, like background singers just chilling out. I actually have them 3D here, so they're not very pronounced. And green with sparkle. Man, you can't go wrong with that, right? All right. What else do we got going on? I suppose the arches and the tree topper, we can talk about these. The arches. I have a little bit of work to do on this, I think. I'm fine with this, but as soon as we get to this transition right here, it hops around maybe too abruptly. And I think that's bothering me just a little bit, but maybe if I were to put in a 1 second transition, let's see what the difference is now. Yeah, see, that doesn't really do anything for me. If I take this to 0.5, we can try that one. No. And see, that doesn't... Something about that just really kind of bothers me a little bit. And so I'll be playing around with maybe trying to smooth it out. And it might be as simple as bringing this over just a little bit more and having them kind of merge. Ah, I do kind of like that. I do. And let's see what happens when I go from here to the next one. That's okay. Okay. So this one going in here is fine. So if I take this and I bring this over here, take this, bring it over just a little bit, take this, bring it over just a little bit. There we go. Let's see if this looks better. I like that better. Yeah, let's save it. Problem solved. And again, it was just a transition from this to this. It was just too jumpy. I didn't like it. So anyway, it's problem solved. Problem solved. Back up here, let's get to our beautiful little star, our tree topper. And I'm using some of the same effects here, but and I'm using single line. A lot of times you're going to see me using the layer star, which I use quite a bit. I love that, but there are times I just wanted this to zoom in and out as it went through the music. And I know what you're thinking, Ron, what did you do with the mega tree? That's sort of different. Yeah, sort of different. I transition out of this and then I go into this, and I like breaking things up. And this is all great. This is all great, but I wanted this change. As soon as we get to the next section. And it's going to transition again. Let's get over to this section here. So again, I'm staying with, I have some flakes in here. Let me get back to this section. This is the one I'm looking at. There are two little sections here. So this one here looks like a little thatchy type of an effect. And this is just using spirals. It's the way in which you use the spirals that make them the most interesting. And 2 is True Unmask is being used on this with 3D. And then we get some of the masking, right? And then we have a palette of 4. That's a palette of 1, palette of 4. And you can see the spiral wraps are the same. but the thickness is different between the top and the bottom. And then this guy here is the same as the second layer spiral effect, except it's using flip horizontal. If I were to change that back to none, then you would get this, and that's what the effect would look like. And that's just sort of mushy. That's no good. And when I'm experimenting, I'm usually going through here and trying this. Well, what would 90 degrees look like? It looks better. What would 180 look like? Well, that's pretty much the same, just going the other way. Flip vertical, that's cool, and that's kind of what I've got, but I got it on flip horizontal so I can get it to move. This doesn't look bad. It's just, I don't like the resolve of the lines coming down. I prefer to have the movement moving around with the lines coming down, because it's not so distracting. And then the resolve of this is a transition right here, which I need to maybe clean that up a little bit, but I just wanted this section here. Anyway, then it gets to the next part, which is really the bouncy part. This is where everything comes in. Greatest show, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so that's a lot of stuff going on there, and I don't want to... It would take a while to go over everything that's going on with the rest of the house. So I think this is a good point to stop this. I'll make a part 2 and we can get into a finer detail what's going on with the rest of it. So look forward to part 2, maybe in another few days or so. I'll wait and get some feedback on what you think about this thus far. I will let you watch this last part one last time. Oh, so much fun. I have a lot of work to do. So look forward to going over this next section with you and finishing the sequence. Hopefully, I've spent about 3 days on this, believe it or not. And probably got about another 3 or 4 days before it is finished. So I hope you found this informative and helpful. Let me know your thoughts, and we'll catch you later. Take care.